Okay, hello friends. This is Vikas Singh, and in this video, we are going to learn about basics about the Redux. So, as I know that if you are a React developer, you must have an desire to learn Redux, right? So, in this video, we will particularly see the basics of why exactly that Redux we are using and simply the basic information, right? So let's begin this video, right? So this blog is simply created by Vincius Dacal. So this blog is created by Vincius Dacal, and he is a software engineer working in UK and he really loves to learn and create and share, right? So that is all about him who had created this sweet blog, right? So here we will learn about some of the terms. So the first term which we are going to learn here is that single source of truth. So what exactly SSOT as he had created the short form of a single source of truth, right? So what exactly this single source of truth in Redux? It simply means that all of your data is being stored at one place, right? And if you are really if you want that data, you can simply call to that one source. Like it is just like you have a storehouse, and everything that you doesn't need for right now, for this time, you just put it there, right? So anytime if you need anything which you really wants to use, you just simply go to that store, and each and everything will be there, right? So in the same way, Redux is work in a same way, like it is the single source of truth. Like it doesn't mean that you have to manage your states like in React we manage the states. Uh, Depends on the states of the component is basically depends upon different components. Like I have to manage that state in one place, then if I have to use that state value in some other component, then I have to pass pass with that props, right? And apart from that, if I just want to use that state value in some nested level of component, right? So there I have to do a lot of work. Like I have to pass from one component to another, then another to another, then another to another, and this is what we call prop dealing in React, right? So if we really don't want to do that prop dealing part, right? So to do that, we just use the Redux. So what exactly Redux gives us a store, right, where we can put all your data, all of our data, and anytime if you just want any variable or any value, we just have to call that store, right? And from there we can directly access those values, right? So what he had written here, so the entire what we had here, the entire state of your React of your application is stored in an object tree with a single store. Okay, so the first line represent that says that any data in your application that you required in your application or in different components, you just have to store. You just have to put all of your data in a place which we call store in React, and as access to the state is done by referring the original data and in the store. So this way, when the information is updated, it gets populated through the application and thus preventing the duplicate data, right? So the another use case of that store is because it's a single source of truth, right? So all of the information that you exactly required in your application is being stored at one place, and there is no other variables, right? In React, so we can copy the same data at many different places, and one component doesn't know about what we had done to that other component, right? And it's also going to be true for our state variables, right? So this is not going to happen with when you are using that Redux part, right? So in Redux, you just have to store all your data at one place, and from there you can access all other datas, all of the data. And so there is not an issue of, okay, by mistake I had changed data at one place, but it doesn't but when I render the same data in another component, it doesn't get updated, and all such problems will not be there when you are using that Redux, right? So what is that second point? So second point is state is read only. Okay, so the only way to change the state of your application by emitting an action, an object that described what happens, right? So what basically it simply represent, or what basically it this state is read only meant, right? So so it simply says that if you want to update that data which is being stored in the state in Redux, right? So you have to create an action, right? And by creating those action, you will specify that what exactly you are going to do with the data which you are willing to update in your store, right? So in simple words, you had mentioned each and everything there, right? So to update your data, you have to do this, right? And it is not like that. If I can simply call some data from the store, and I can directly manipulate it. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so if you are really wants to update the data which you get from the store, you have to change you have to create an action, and that action basically, by creating an action, you will describe a function, and in that function you will mention that what exactly you want to do with that data, and how you are willing to manipulate those data which you are willing to store, which is presently is being stored in the Redux state, right? To access the state, you have to use that get state and from the store, and it returns the whole application state, but as read only, right? So in simple words, it says that if you are willing to use some data from the store, you just have to use a method which is called the get state, right? And by using this, you have that access to only read that data, right? So store doesn't, or in simple words, React doesn't allow you to update this one, right? Update the data. It just give you an access to read the data, and if you are willing to use that data at some place, you can do that, right? So this is so in simple words, we just use get state to do that, okay, to get the data from a Redux store. And from the next line which he had mentioned here is to listen to change on the state. We use that store method subscribe and pass a listener to the parameters in the following way, right? So what exactly this listen and this subscribe means, right? So if I just if I want to make sure that anytime if my state variable get updated in my Redux store, my component or whatever, or no matter whenever I use this I use those data should also get updated, right? So to do that, I have to use the subscribe method, right? So by using the subscribe method, what exactly happens? Suppose here we have one part, and here we have a different component, right? And if I want to make sure that anytime the data in the store get updated, my component will re-render and will notify that, okay, here we have some change in the store value which you are using in your component. So I have something I have some updated data for you, right? So in this way, our component know about okay, something had changed in the store value, and we have to update our component. So how we can do this? We can simply create we can simply use that subscribe method, and to do that, I just have to follow some syntax like this. I just write that store dot subscribe, and then I create a function, and this function is basically represent, okay, what exactly I want to do if something changed, right? So here I mentioned that, okay, whenever some data has been changed in the store, execute every time there is some changes. So in that change, I just updated a value, a const value, and then I get the state data, right? So I just so what I had done here, I just done a simple thing that I had created a function with the name of unsubscribe, and here I subscribe to that to our store, and I said that, okay, anytime, any or every time our state values get updated, you have to let me know, and store that updated value in state variable, right? So this is what this is how a subscribe function will work. And we had done this and we had, and it is not like that you have to also do that same, because in this process we had get all the data which is being stored in our Redux store. Okay, so in practical cases we really don't want to do that. Okay, so we just so whenever we subscribe our store in my component, in my different components, I just have to make sure that I just only call those datas which is required by my component, and not each and every data, right? So what is here we have to look at. As we can see in the above example, when we want to cancel the listen, we just call the value return from the method subscribe as a function, right? So what we had just seen here, when we want to cancel the listener, whenever I want to cancel the listener, we want to call the value return, and from that method subscribe a function, एक function call होता है, right? So when we needs to modify the state, the change needs to be required by the action and an object containing the type request, and the payload option type is identified for the action, and the payload is the content to be sent to the action, and as seen in the following example, right? So in the above statement, what is that we have to understand here? So the simple thing is that, for example, let's say I just want to update the state value of my Redux component, right? In my Redux, I just want to update the Redux, some values in our Redux store, right? So to do that, what I have to do, I just have to create an action, right? So in that action, there are two things. First one is the type, okay, and the second one is the payload. Okay, so what this basically type does, type basically tells our React, okay, so this is the event which is being triggered by our component by some, okay, I had just accidentally I had hit this. I doesn't want to open this, so I just want to close this one and again open the terminal. And what exactly I want to do, I want to specify with that type. So type basically specify that, okay, what kind of action and what kind of event is this, okay, and based upon this event, what kind of and what is the data I want to update or store in the Redux, right, in the Redux store, and which is being totally depends upon this type. Okay, so the one thing which you had also look here, like it says it requires. Okay, so what exactly this require means? So this require is this, so the meaning of this require is simple, you can't skip this field. Okay, so whenever you create an action to interact with or modify the state values in the Redux, you have to create the type. Okay, and type is not optional. if you want to create an action, you have to first mention a type. Okay, so after mentioning this, after creating this type, you will also create a payload. So in payload, you will send all the data which you are willing to send to that store, Redux store. Okay, and modify some data, and modify the data, or willing to add new fields in a Redux store. So the type is the identifier. So type is simply the identifier of the action, and the payload is the content to be sent to the action, as you can see here, right? So we just create a format. So here the block starts, here the blocks end, and here we define define our action type. So here I just use, in general, I just have to use that uppercase, like uppercase words, all the letters in uppercase, and this should be like this, and this should be like that. It can simply specify, and it can simply tell a developer like what exactly we want to do with this, right? So the message should be very clear in the type. Okay, and then I just I just added these other parameters like name and email, and these other parameters which you can see here, like name and email, will goes to this payload section, right? It can automatic go to this payload section, and this type will be get stored in this type section, right? So this is how the Redux in Redux that action is works. So this complete package is an action, right? Okay, so in this example above, action has type, which is add contact, and the necessary data to be included in the contact in the state, right? And we just want to update our state values with these values. Okay, so it's common to create an action using action creator. Like if you are willing to create a new action, you just have to use that action creator, which are the function that expects the specific parameters and return a formatted object, as in the following example. So as you can see in this example, I think understanding something by example, with example, is gonna quite easy for you. Like if you just see here, like I just create a function, okay, and it's an arrow function. So here I just pass two parameters. First one is the name, and the second one is the email, and from there I just return this. Okay, and while I'm returning this, I just mention here like what is the type of that action, and here is the name and the email. And what basically this name and the email does, it simply stores, it's simply a simple representation of, okay, name equals to name and email equals to email, right? So so this name part becomes the variable, and the value which is being passed from within this name will get stored in that name. In the same manner, this email is going to be the key, okay, and the value coming from this email part is going to be stored in this here, right? So this is the syntax which is being allowed by the JavaScript. Okay, so you can also do this, or you can simply like write like name equals to then name and email equals to then email, and that will also work the same way as this one. Okay, to dispatch an action, we just use this method dispatch from the store. Okay, so basically so here we had basically created an action, right? And here we had defined our type, and here we had defined the data which we are willing to send as an payload. Okay, so dispatch, so what exactly this dispatch is? So dispatching means we just want to tell our system, okay, we had finally created our action, okay, and we just want to execute this, right? We had just created our action and we just want to execute it, and by executing this, will our Redux store will get an notification, okay, there are some action and there are some data which is being passed by our system, or our application, then now you have a task to do some upgradation in our state values. Okay, so this is what this dispatch does. Okay, so this dispatch basically is the connection between our action or simple words in our application and our Redux store. Okay, so by dispatching this, by using the simple syntax like dispatch, and from there I just call my function here like so. Okay, so I just call my function. I will invoke my function, and while invoking this function I just passes the required parameters for like in my case I just need the 2 parameters. Okay, so the first one here goes to this name, and the second one is here goes to that email part. Okay, so this is, so by doing this we just simply dispatch our action, right? And by dispatching the action, what exactly happened? The simple words, in simple words, it basically tells our Redux store, okay, there we have something for you, man, and you just have to update this. Okay, so what next? So the third point is changes are made with the pure function. Okay, so this is also going to be something which you have to understand, because this is the part where probably you are going to be what I can say, probably you are going to be confused. Okay, so please take care. Please dive your attention to the main part, and please don't focus on my language, because I know that I can't speak English much better, but I am trying to improve my English. Okay, and over the time I definitely gonna improve my communication, right? So that is not an issue. So the issue is we have to understand this part. Okay, so to describe the way the state will changes by the action, we write the pure reducer. Okay, so what basically this pure reducer means? Okay, so the pure reducer simply means that whenever we use an action, okay, so that action will goes to the reducer. Okay, so there is a term which is being used in Redux which we call reducer, and that reducer is the part that reducer is the main we can say the middleman, which connects, which basically do all that function which is being required to store the data, to store and do the counterpart and do everything, right? Okay, so this is the work of a reducer. Okay, so in simple words, as you can see here, like to describe the way that state will changes the action, we write a pure reducer. And when we are writing that pure reducer, pure means that it's like a pure function. Okay, and we don't use any middleware here, or any kind of extra HOF function, header function, and like so. Okay, so it's a kind of pure function. Okay, so reducers are the function that is called every time an action is dispatched, right? As I told you, reducer is simply a function. It doesn't it doesn't have to do anything with the fancy words. Okay, it's simply a function. Okay, and this function executes whenever we dispatch an action. Whenever you dispatch an action, function will call, and the name of the function in Redux is reducer. Okay, so they receive the current state and the action as parameters. Okay, so what basically it does, it basically goes to the R store, and from store it will get all the state values. Okay, or in simple words, it will get all the required state values. Okay, and at the same time it also receive that action and the parameters we had just sent with our actions. Okay, and by doing all that function and that calculation, it will update the value and finally return the new state. Okay, so what is this new state is? So new state means it basically, this reducer basically updates the value in our Redux, right? Okay, so this is the middleman which is doing everything. So this is the main operator, right? So it will take the data from our Redux store, and it will take the action and the parameters which we had passed in our action. Okay, and by comparing this and doing some little calculations, it will perform it will update it will update the state values. Okay, state values in the Redux and inform our Redux store. Okay, so we have these changes, and you have to understand this, you have to store this. Okay, I don't want to listen anything, you just have to store this. Okay, store this updated value. And just so as we update the value, what basically happened, as we had already talk about this. Okay, that whenever the store value will updated, any component which is being subscribed, okay, which is being subscribed to store, will get informed about the changes. Okay, and if they are using some of the component which is being updated in the store, they have to be get re-render. Okay, that value must have to be updated. Okay, so that is then that should be the complete flow of our Redux in React, or in any other places where you can use the Redux. Okay, so let's complete this one. Okay, so reducer is simply a function which calls every time we dispatch, and they receive the current state and the action as the parameter and return the new state. Okay, so it is important to highlight that reducer must be a pure function. Okay, so when we call this pure function means it doesn't take any extra argument. Okay, and it doesn't allow any other function to be the part as an argument, or it doesn't execute anything in middle of its so it doesn't execute, so it doesn't work like an HOF function, header function. Okay, it doesn't work like that. It simply take simple arguments, not function, right? Okay, clear? Okay, so given the same parameters, a reducer should always return the same result, and to be that, it has to be based on own scope. So okay, so in other words, you can also say this like a pure function is a function where you put whenever you give same value to that function, it will always return the same predictable result. Okay, so for example, if I just passes two parameters like 2 and 4, every time I passes these two arguments 2 and 4, the result should be whatever. For example, the first time we get a result 6, so the next time it should also give the result 6. So the next time, or no matter how many times I call that function with those same parameters, it should return the same value. Okay, so that is what we call a pure function, right? So consider our reducers, and reducers must be pure function, as we had already told you, and we are going to implement our logic to include a new contact in the state. And by doing this, we just want to update the values. Okay, so how we can do this? So there we have our reducer, Okay, so reducer is a function. So in a simple words, reducer is a function. So this reducer takes two things. First one is the state value. So here we have our state values, right? And here we have the action which we had just passed from our application, which we have just dispatched from our application, right? So it has these two parameters. First one is the state, second one is that action, and it simply checks, okay, what is that action type? Okay, so it's an add contact, right? So if it is an add contact, it will call the function which is related to that add contact. Okay, so if it is add contact, return this. So simply we firstly take all the state variables, okay, all the state values, and from there we find, okay, then in our state we have something like contact collection. Okay, so in that contact collection, I just carry each and everything from that state dot contact collection here. Okay, and in this I have something like name and email, which I just want to update. Okay, and the values which I want to put here or update here is coming from the payload. Okay, or in simple words, that action which we had created there, right? So there we can there we just mention, okay, we just want to update this name with that action dot name, and this email with that action dot email. Okay, so by doing this we can simply created our reducer, and this reducer will do all the work for you to update the store in the Redux. Okay, so to update the values in the store which is created in Redux. Okay, so as you can see, then in the above example, our reducer checks if the action type is add contact. Agar if it is add contact, then it returns a new state and including the new contact, right? So give the most out of the Redux, you can understand the concept of the immutability. And in the above example, we don't use the push method to include the new contact into the contact. Instead, we returns a new contact collection, and then one has the same contacts in the previous collection but containing the new contact. This way we prevents the previous state and stays in the premises of the read only state. Okay, so what basically they told you. Okay, so as maybe you may think that, okay, we had simply what we had done here, we had simply updated these name and email. Okay, so exactly we had not simply update this. We follow the process, follow the principle of immutability in Redux. Okay, so immutability simply means whenever I just want to make a change in my Redux, I doesn't have access to simply modify the same state. Okay, so firstly we have to update the firstly we have to copy. Okay, so firstly we have to make a copy. So this so there I had make a copy. So there I had make a copy, right? So after making this copy, now I have this copy. Okay, so this is just a copy of the state values. Okay, and it whenever I make any change in these copy, it doesn't affect it doesn't simply affect my values in my state, in my Redux. Okay, so then I updated the copy value. Okay, so this is my copied state, and here I updated the next and my name and that email. And after doing all this, I just tell my computer, okay, tell the Redux, okay, so I had updated the new object which doesn't have any relation with the previous one. Okay, so you just have to okay, do a little thing, delete the previous one. Okay, and insert this one in place of that. Okay, so in this way we do our task, and at the same time we also don't break the principle of immutability in Redux. Or in simple words, whenever you are willing to do this, do not simply directly wants to modify the data, you can simply follow this syntax. And you can do that, right? So to get the most of the Redux, you must understand the concept of immutability, which I had just told you. And in the above example, you don't have to push. So if I directly want to manipulate the data, I can use it simply. I can simply use that push method, right? But it doesn't work because Redux doesn't allow you to directly manipulate the data of store. Okay, so because of that, I just make a different syntax and a different method. Firstly, I make a copy, then updated the value, then tell our Redux store, okay, we have some updated values, please delete the previous one and update this one. Okay, So the one has the same contact as the previous collection, but they contain the new contact. So this way we prevents the previous state and stays in the premises of the read-only state. Okay, so by following these three principles, you can write a predictable application very easily. Okay, so now you have a basic understanding of what a Redux is and how basically it works. So I think if you have any confusion, if you are still confused, you can simply go to that the Redux documentation and you will easily understand the concept. Okay, and simply you will get the implementation part also, right? So now you are capable of understanding all these concepts and implementing. Okay, so the last final words are these. So the redux.js is the JavaScript library that implements the Redux in is only 2 KB, and it is the great documentation where you can find information about the Redux features. You instead of go deeper, and the documentation is very good place to start. At the beginner, at the beginning, Redux can seems a little complicated because it is different from what we are using to. But nevertheless, as soon as you learn the basics, the sky is limitless. Okay, so it's simply it is not rocket science, but yeah, if you are a beginner, you have to put a little effort to understand the concept of Redux. And I think that with these videos, with this little introduction and the little knowledge which I have by practically implementing the Redux, will help you to understand how Redux actually works and what are the important sections which you have to understand. And I can simply tell you that with this small video, you will really get a lot of information, that is really needed to create a Redux, to create Redux and call the Redux, get the data, subscribe to that event, and like it's cover everything which you need when you are willing to work with Redux. So I think this is the time where I have to close this video, and we will meet you in some other video. For till then, I just want to say bye and take care.